Chris Love go too crazy. Chris Love go too crazy.
Running from the stars, you won't make it far. Rolling gas in a cigar, everything I'm dropping hard. Running from the stars, you won't make it far. Rolling gas in a cigar, everything I'm dropping hard. Yeah. Smoking dope, get my mind right. Wavy in the limelight, nose bleeding, eyes white. Diamonds in my highlights, wasting all your weed in the wood and your eyes white. Fucking stays out if I die right. Rockin' Pine Club, gotta check my presentation. I'm supplying medication, hate to see my bias waiting. Couldn't bond out at the station, had to reevaluate shit. Some things are to explain, but I'm here, congratulations. Good smoke from Portland, I'm a trailblaze. All smiley faces and pinky likes when the mail came. Send me booty pics if I go back to the jail cage. Need another clock, what I'm weighing, make my scale break. Running from the stars, you won't make it far. Rolling gas in a cigar, everything I'm dropping hard. Running from the stars, you won't make it far. Rolling gas in a cigar, everything I'm dropping hard. Somebody tell a waitress I'm ordering lobster. She was begging me to pop her, so I popped her. Wade Guard official, you can tell by his posture. I just signed new shooters to my rosters. I be feeling like I'm famous already. How they heard by brand new information y'all telling? Dead broke to any damn thing y'all selling. Got new hundreds on me right.
And you can smell it, Brother Chip,
Hello.
Brother Dwayne, Brother Darkness. Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year to you.
Oh man, how y'all doing, man?
Good. So are you? I'm in Colombia, so I'm not able to watch the football games. Are you surprised that Alabama lost to Michigan? I just saw the score. That's all I've seen.
Nah, actually I had Michigan in my parlay, so I thought Michigan was gonna win, but I didn't think they would win by a lot.
Well, they didn't win by a lot. I think it went down to the last play of the game. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it went to overtime.
But they really screwed Florida State. Florida State really deserved to be there much more than Alabama did.
You think so?
Oh yeah, they went undefeated in the SEC. Or no, is it the ACC? They went undefeated.
ACC.
They went undefeated in the ACC. They went 14-0, and
Yeah.
Alabama lost at least once. They were penalized because they had lost their quarterback.
Yeah.
It seems hugely unfair that they wouldn't reward the undefeated team with a chance to go all the way.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, Alabama being in the SEC, that conference is much more stronger. So if you look over the past, I say 8 years, Alabama got the heads up over A&M. That made A&M go to the SEC. Alabama had the heads up over TCU, Notre Dame. So within the next couple of years, you're gonna start seeing football, prominent college football teams go into tougher conferences just so they could be in the limelight like that.
Well, still, it's a Power 5 or Power 6 conference. They play major schools, and they play SEC teams, and they went undefeated. I don't know what more a team could hope to do than go undefeated in a major conference schedule, lose their starting quarterback, lose their backup quarterback, and still win. I mean, they had a great defense. They won with a third string quarterback, 13-7. So I
Yeah,
think maybe they just
I agree with you, brother Chip, on your point. I think more so if they would have got, so you gotta look at it like this. If they would have made it to the playoffs, they probably would have got beat by 30 or 40. So we could say
not necessarily because they have a really tough defense. I've seen top defensive teams win win against top offenses if they if they're really stout and smack them down. They could win a 7-0 national championship. It's been done, and
most definitely.
that defense of Florida State was very very strong.
Most definitely. I agree with you on that point, brother Chip. I don't think I have no contention with what you're saying. I think just if we look over the past 8 years, we see Alabama kind of getting, or not just Alabama, because Georgia too. We see those SEC teams kind of getting a little favoritism.
Well, I mean, Georgia went undefeated. They deserved it. They beat Alabama. They beat LSU. They beat a number of strong teams. They definitely deserved to go. Washington got in, and they deserved it. They 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 ran the table in the last year of the Pacific 12, the Pac-12 conference. They ran the table, so they deserved to go. And then Florida State absolutely deserves to go with an undefeated record. Why would you favor um, one-loss team against an undefeated team? It makes no sense.
I mean, I'm gonna just say, you got to look at the level of competition. If they would have made it to the playoffs, I don't know if you remember, but I want to say like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, TCU made it to the playoffs. Or was it Oklahoma? I think it was Oklahoma. They made it to the playoffs and got blew out by like 30 something against Georgia. But Alabama was playing TCU and Oklahoma was playing Georgia. And I think Georgia beat them by like 30, 40 points. Um,
Well, that could
USC,
happen. That could happen. I mean, it's not like, but there's no guarantees. You can't prejudge something by saying, "Oh, they'll lose by 40." That's why they play the game. If they, I mean, if you had an undefeated team and they lose by 40, okay, they lose by 40. But uh, you know that happens even in Super Bowls. Even in pros, you get one team that looks like it's going to be extremely strong, and they get blasted out by 40, 50 points. But that doesn't mean they didn't deserve to get there in the first place.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I wouldn't say that Florida State didn't deserve to be there. I agree with you 100%. They deserve to be in the final playoffs. They deserve to be in there. I agree with you 100%.
So that's going to have a lot of echoes because now Florida State is going to going to have a big lawsuit over this. There's going to be a lot of money spent on something that shouldn't have to be spent on. They may they may they may try to get into a different conference so that doesn't happen to them again. I'm not sure. The interesting in the West that the Pacific 12 essentially fell apart over why I don't know. I don't know why they some of them wanted to go to the Big 12, some of them wanted to go to the Big 10, and
Right.
then the two that are left are Oregon State and Washington State. So they're probably going to try to reform the Pacific Conference from teams in the Mountain West and possibly from the Southwest Athletic Conference or some combination of the two. Um, but then they really screwed up. I mean, all those teams they lost millions of dollars by 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 all running for the exit and leaving the Oregon and Washington schools with the name of the Pac-12. That cost them millions of dollars.
Most definitely.
What?
Most definitely.
Very strange.
Real quick, I want to see if my intel is correct. Brother Darkness, you there? Happy New Year's to you. All right, I'm gonna wait till Brother Darkness come in. I was listening to a Hebrew Brother Chip. I was listening to a Hebrew debater, a Muslim, and the Muslim said that nowhere in the Bible it says that Mary was a virgin. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that they was talking about the translation or the Hebrew, because I think virgin is in the King James, correct?
Well, the Greek, the Septuagint uses the word parthenos, which means virgin. The Hebrew uses the word alma, which is a woman, a young woman of marriageable age. The original context in Isaiah 7 is the wife of Ahaz, that during a war, the Lord promised King Ahaz a son, and they said, "Will you, as a sign that God is with you, the Lord promises to give you a son, and you shall call his name Emmanuel, which means God with us." And before the boy knows how to distinguish between the good and the bad, the problems that you have in your kingdom will be settled. So the original setting of the prophecy was in the 8th century BC, the son which was going to be given to King Ahaz. But there's also a long series of a cycle of prophecy that goes on to say that the son which is going to be born will be called Mighty God, Almighty Father, Prince of Peace, and of the increase of his government there will be no end. So the idea, the church tied in the prophecy of the young woman who will conceive, used the Septuagint translation of virgin, and then applied that to the virgin birth in Luke chapter 2. But that was a tradition of the church, that Jesus was born of a virgin and that he would be the mighty God, the mighty God, everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. So Luke chapter 2 and Matthew teaches that Jesus was born of a virgin, based on this prophecy, which was originally applied to King Ahaz.
Okay, okay. So in the King James version, the word virgin is in the Bible.
It's in the translation. The Hebrew is Alma. There's two words in Hebrew for a young unmarried woman. One is Betula, which is clearly a child not yet married, and the other one is Alma, which is a young woman of marriageable age.
Okay, so which meaning would you use for Mary?
Well, I mean, there's additional teaching in Luke, which is that Jesus was born of a virgin. That was the account that the early church taught, because the idea was that Jesus was the Son of God, and so because he is the Son of God, he had to have a birth different from ordinary people. So, in order for Jesus to be the Son of God, he needed to have a heavenly supernatural birth. So, I mean, if we were going to say that Jesus was a prophet, the way Muslims do, then there's no reason for the virgin birth. You can have, I mean, all the prophets had mothers and fathers, so there would be no reason to give Jesus a virgin birth if he was simply a prophet, the way the Muslims teach.
Okay, so are you basically saying that according to how you interpret the Bible, are you saying that Mary was a virgin.
That is what the story is saying. Yes.
Okay. So when they pull out these different Hebrew translations,
Well,
um,
the Hebrew isn't a translation. That's the original.
that's the what?
The original.
Right. So when how you just distinguish the two words from one another, how can one make the argument? How can one make the argument that no, it's not saying she's a virgin. It's saying that she's young and
Well,
pure.
I mean, the context is what governs. There in Isaiah chapter 14, the original context is a child to be born to King Ahaz. And this is obvious. There's no supernatural birth in that at all. It says that the young woman will conceive and bear a son, and the name you will give him is Emmanuel. What the church did is they said that the child in Isaiah chapter 7 is a type, is like a foreshadowing of the coming of Jesus. And so the church took the prophecy from Isaiah 7 and combined that with the prophecy in Isaiah 9 about the eternal kingdom of of this son who would be the mighty God, the almighty Father and the Prince of Peace, and of whom his government shall have no end. And so they said that the birth of this son in chapter 7, which originally refers to Ahaz, is is a foreshadowing of the fulfillment in Christ, in Jesus, in the Gospels of Luke and Matthew.
Okay, King Aha. Um,
Ahaz.
okay, King Ahaz. You said that. Break that down one more time because I don't want to misquote you. The King Ahaz part, and you said the church combined it.
Right. They took the prophecy from Isaiah 7, which was fulfilled in the 8th century when the boy was born to the king Ahaz during his struggle with the Syrians and the Assyrians, and applied that the centuries later to the birth of Jesus as the coming of the eternal Son of God, whose kingdom would have no end. So the early church is looking back at the birth of Jesus and the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus, and saying that this birth of Jesus to Mary was a fulfillment of this prophecy, which was originally given in Isaiah chapter 7, referring to King Ahaz.
And how is it fulfilled exactly? I'm confused on that part.
Well, it's fulfilled because Mary testified to the church. That's where this came from. This is when you read Luke chapter 2, you're reading the testimony of Mary. The Luke is using sources, and he uses the sources of different members of the early church. And the only person in position after the death of Jesus and his resurrection to know to know about the birth would be Mary. So Luke is using Mary's memory, um, possibly through some intermediary, talking about the birth of her son 30, 40 years, 30, 40, 50 years prior.
That's what I was gonna ask you. If Luke never spoke to Mary, how could you come to that conclusion? And when you say intermediary, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, intermediary means somebody between. According to John, Mary lived in the house of the Apostle John after the crucifixion of her son. Mary moved into the house of the Apostle John, and Luke is not an eyewitness. He says in the first chapter that he investigated these things most carefully so that you Theophilus, which also means friend of God, would know the certainty of those things about which you have heard. And so Luke is someone who uses sources and tells the story, but not necessarily in chronological order. So he's telling the story in a thematic way, and he's telling it based on the sources that are available to him. One of which is probably Mark, one of which may be parts of Matthew, and he may well have had other material available to him. If you read the Greek, which maybe you'll learn Greek someday, who knows? If you read the Greek of Luke, the first chapter is very, very classical, very smooth. And then when you get to the account of the birth of Jesus, it has a lot of signs of a Semitic source. It reads like somebody who is translating Hebrew into Greek, or somebody who speaks Greek but whose native language is Semitic. So you have a Semitic form of speech in the Greek when you go from Luke chapter 1 to Luke chapter 2 and the birth of Jesus. So the chapter in Luke has the signs of a Semitic source. And because it's talking about things relating to the birth of Jesus, we're talking about some of the earliest traditions in the church.
Okay, so you said Luke never met Mary.
We
So
don't
Luke,
know. We don't know how long Mary lived. Um, we don't know how long Mary lived, but it is possible that she was interviewed and her story was taken down, and that Luke
okay,
had access to that and used this in his production of his 2-volume gospel, which is Luke and Acts. The Luke and Acts go together. They're one work divided into 2 scrolls.
okay. So can we call Luke of the Bible the disciple Luke? Can we call Luke a liar?
A liar? No, there's very little evidence of him. Very little evidence of him not being a pretty good historian. There's lots of details that come up in his Gospels, which were later verified in archaeological digs and historical sources. So that where they have been able to check him on different aspects of Roman and first century history, uh, Luke comes out to be a very good source of casual information about the first century Roman Empire.
Okay, but when Luke speaks, when we don't, when we talk about when we hear when you try to convert Mary's existence or Mary's history back to Luke, Luke is speaking in third person at least. So it's like, how can he speak for somebody if he's just like, if I use you as my source, I can't talk like I'm you.
Well, actually, in the writing of the first century, that was quite common. You don't have much. You don't have really a sense before the semi-modern era of a biographical style. So you have to take into account the age that you're writing about. Even somebody as famous as Julius Caesar wrote his commentary on the Gallic Wars in third person, even though he was talking about himself. So this is a literary format that was familiar to people in that time. They would not expect to see somebody using the word I and me and I did this and this happened to me. That sort of open biography was simply not part of the literary style of the day.
I got you. I like, matter of fact, I like how you said that because you telling the truth. They use words like thy, and I like that. I could. As soon as you said it, I understood exactly what you were saying. Okay, so when we got Paul and Luke contradicting each other, How do
In
you
what
feel about
sense? In what sense?
when they speak about Jesus, Luke talks about Jesus like he's a real person. Paul talks about Jesus like he's a supernatural God's son, like he's God, the holy, and Jesus the holy. It's not Luke. Paul don't talk about Jesus as an actual person. Paul talk about Jesus as a like a superhero.
Well, part of that is is that Paul comes to knowledge. Paul gets into the church after the crucifixion and the resurrection. He's
Right.
early, but he's like 3 or 4 years after this, and he comes into Christianity through a vision, which he has as he goes into Damascus. So you can't expect him to be telling the story of Jesus as an eyewitness because he wasn't an eyewitness. He is a witness of the traditions of the church, but he takes the traditions of the church and then writes letters to the various churches answering their problems, in part based on the traditions that he learned from the other disciples and also part on his own reflections, his own theological reflections, based on what he learned from all his experience, both as a Pharisee, as a student of the Torah and the Psalms and the prophets, and the traditions that he received from the other apostles, and his own reflections on those traditions, because Paul is a very creative thinker.
Have you ever heard of Dr. Richard Carrier?
Richard Carrier, I mean, it's there's so many different people. I mean, uh, I don't I'm not especially familiar with him.
Okay, so Richard Carrier, he's basically you have I think me and you talked about this before. Syncretism or stealing, however you want to phrase it, or borrowing, however you want to phrase it, getting ancient Egyptian history, finding um ancient Egyptian texts and history and myths and um what's that word, miracles inside of the Bible, but in Egypt it was 2,000 years later. So when we look at
No,
ancient,
you mean in the New Testament it's 2,000 years later because a lot of the Egyptian myth, a lot of the Egyptian mythology is much older.
you said the older than, you said 2,000 years older than the New Testament, you said.
Yes,
So
at
are you
least
saying that the Old Testament is contemporary?
parts of it are. The Torah is probably, depending on the dating that you want to accept, it's somewhere between 1,400 to 1,000 years before the New Testament.
Okay, so the New
And
Testament
so,
came
and so
around.
the period of the that Moses is more or less contemporaneous with the new kingdom of Egypt, as opposed to the old kingdom of Egypt is like 3,000 BC or more. So the old kingdom of Egypt is before much of anything is talked about in the Bible. Abraham probably has a date of around 2000 BC. So that would be possibly just before or during the maybe just before the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, and then the Torah would be during the new king. The story of Moses would be during the new kingdom of Egypt. So a lot of those ancient myths were already present in Egyptian theology before before the Old Testament, before the Torah is being written.
Okay, so I think I think I kind of I think I kind of lost my point, but I'm gonna catch it again.
All
So
right.
what we were circling over was the. Let me see. Let me go back. Let me go back to Mary. Let me try to finish it off with. Let me try to finish my thought process with Mary.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we got Luke. We got Luke looking at Jesus like a real person. We got Luke um um reading up or researching and writing in third person for Mary. Now we got Paul. Paul is more so looking at Jesus like I said, a superhero. He looking at Jesus like a Superman, not a person walking, not a human being walking this earth, but more so like a person that like God's little a God in the sky, literally having the sun. So it's like all supernatural. So I think earlier you were saying that Paul came in later. That's what you were saying.
Yes, he did not know Jesus during his lifetime.
Okay, so are you saying that Luke knew Jesus during his lifetime?
No, Luke didn't know Jesus during his lifetime either, but he was in touch with the people who did, and
Okay,
he was using their sources, taking earlier sources, some of which we have and some of which we don't, and using them to create his two-volume history, starting from the birth of Jesus to around AD 61.
okay, so um okay, I got you on that point. So when we use the word prophets, when we use the word prophets, do you think that is still something that is going on today?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say, I can't say one way or another. I mean, who know? I don't know of anybody who is like a prophet in a wide sense. There may, maybe somebody gets some sort of a vision, but I don't expect that we're going to find, a writing style prophet in the way of the Old Testament, or maybe even of some of the very early New Testament prophets who talked about, who gave prophecies, for example, about what would happen to Paul. There was one called, you can find this in Acts, that Agabus uh, went to Paul and symbolically put chains on him and said, "This is what will happen to you if you go to Jerusalem. If you go and take up a collection and try to deliver aid to Jerusalem, this is what will happen to you. The man who does this will be put into chains." And that was an example in Acts of a New Testament prophecy. And Luke was in position to know about that, because he was one of the people who went on preaching missions with Paul. He knew Paul personally.
Okay, so we talk about prophets, like let's say somebody let's say somebody that could tell you your future within the next 5 to 10 years. Would you believe that person?
I don't think that you will know. Typically, the way the prophecies work is you don't know what they mean until after the fact.
I got you, brother Chip. So
I'll
let's
give
just
you a
say,
very small example, and I don't think I'm a prophet in any way. But I remember when my mother died, I had a dream, I had a dream, and I saw the face in my dream of somebody with black hair and a laughing face. And it was a very vivid dream, and I remember thinking, this is somebody who will be important for me. But it was like, and maybe it was a suggestive type of thing. Maybe it was my mind talking to me about looking, telling me to go look at possibilities in life. But I did end up finding somebody with black hair and a laughing face. and I'm married to her. But I can't say that that was a prophecy or that I was some sort of prophet. It could be that my mind gave me a sense of something to watch out for this. And that later on, when I found this thing to watch out for, I watched out for it. So
I got
it might be that that even in the biblical prophecies, that these things become clear over a great deal of time later. That the people who give them don't necessarily know what they're, the way it's going to be when it actually happens.
okay. So I'm gonna get to that science thing that you were just talking about. So let's say people advertising that they could read your future, or they could do palm reading, or they could tell you what you need.
Yeah,
Hold on,
yeah.
hold on, hold on,
I
hold
don't
on.
believe in any of that. I don't
You don't
believe in
believe?
any of
Okay,
that.
that's what I was getting to. That's what I was
Right,
getting to.
right.
So you take
I
that
don't believe in any of
zero,
it.
you get at 0% as far as being effective.
Well, let's put it this way. Um, there was a lady in Los Angeles who claimed to be from the Caribbean, but she was actually from Los Angeles, and her name was Miss Cleo.
Miss
And,
Cleo.
and she was part of the Psychic Friends Network.
Ah,
But the funny thing about Miss Cleo, well, she was Jamaican, except that she was born in Los Angeles. She had an accent, but she didn't realize that the federal authorities were onto her for a certain amount of fraud. So for some reason, her psychic friends or her spirit guides didn't let her know that she was about to be busted. Isn't that sad?
man, Mr. Chip. I remember waking up 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, being a kid, going use the restroom, seeing Miss Cleo on the TV playing with the ball and doing the little readings from the callers. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the feds decided to interrupt her budding career as a futurist.
Okay, so I'm gonna just get this. I want this for the whole audience. I want this for everybody that's listening. Brother Chip, when we run into somebody, this scenario, when we run into somebody that's trying to tell us about our future, give us a spiritual awakening, give us a palm reading, tell us what we're going to be about in the next 5 years, what do we do to that person, Brother Chip?
Well, I don't think that reading your palm is going to get you anywhere. Your future is going to be uh, based on the chances, the opportunities you have, and the work that you do. I mean, if you're going to have a rap career, a super wavy rap career, or a super wavy clothing career, it's going to depend on the contacts you make, the decisions you make, the quality of the records you make, and then maybe somebody will say that I saw you um, building a house next to Kid Rock and his gold elevator in Tennessee and his White House replica. Maybe you'll have a gold elevator there in Houston. Um, did you see that, Joe Rogan? They showed a picture of Kid Rock's house. I'm not sure what city it's in, but he built a replica of the White House. I think he built it in Tennessee. Um,
Nah, I didn't check it out, but I'm
it's,
definitely
it's
gonna check
pretty
it
funny. It's pretty funny. I mean, it's 27,000 square feet,
out.
two bedrooms, only two bedrooms in a house of 27,000 square feet, and it has a gold elevator in the center. And the people who were building the house, and they said, most people who get elevators, they want to hide them. And he said, hell no. I don't want to hide this. I want everybody who goes to my house to say, look at this. Kid Rock has a fucking gold elevator.
That's crazy. That's crazy, man.
It's
That's that money, huh?
27,000 square feet, and he has room for one house guest. And the rest of it is a party house. It's just party, party, party.
2 bedrooms.
Two
That's
bedrooms, 27,000 square feet.
I bet it got at least I bet it got at least 10 bathrooms though, but the chip.
I wouldn't. Yeah, you can go on YouTube and see it. Joe Rogan, Kid Rock.
I'm gonna check
You'll
it out, but
have some fun.
I'm gonna check it out. So so with the the tarot card and the reading your future and calling yourself a prophet in America or calling yourself a
Those people are
prophet.
really unhappy. Those people are really unhappy. They want to manipulate the world. They want to manipulate what's going on around them, and they tend to be very unhappy and depressed people.
They scamming, brother Chip. They scamming.
Or they're deluded and they're disappointed because they know that what they're saying is very unlikely to be true, but they desperately want it to be true.
Okay, so now let's get to the dreams. Now let's get to these dreams that every prophet or every person, every for something to happen in the Bible, you had to have a dream. You had to be sitting on a toilet and you had to get a memo from God. So we seeing this today, brother Chip. We this is in the flesh. People having dreams, like you just said. You had a dream. You had a dream, and you ended
I
up
did.
finding your wife.
That's right. I did.
Right. So the human brain is powerful. The believing mind, Homo sapien mind is powerful. You get what I'm saying? Even animals' brain is powerful. You know what I'm saying? So when we talk about when you just said they know it's wrong, but they wanna believe it. They wanna believe it's true. Can you just speak on how powerful the mind is, how powerful the believing brain is?
Well, sure. We know that. But if you're talking about the Bible or about visions and dreams, the question is this: is the person, what are the results? What are the fruits of what the prophecies are? Is this something that a person is using to get an advantage? Is this something that a person is doing to benefit others, to not trying to manipulate society, not trying to get money, not trying to get prestige, but simply trying to help? If a lot of this thing, there could be somebody, and there's no guarantees that something is true just because somebody wants to be helpful. But you can pretty well determine that if somebody is being manipulative, like and using prophecy or using so-called prophetic office in order to get money or to get women or to get power, because that's usually what it is. All the sex cults all throughout history have concentrated on money, sex, and power. Whether that was and that whether you're talking about the really early sex cults like Islam or the Munster prophets in the 16th century, or you have people like the Yahweh ben Yahweh in Miami, or the fellow who started the Nubian Society of Moors, or you're talking about this guy Richard something or other and his New Age cult. I forget the name of it, but he was persuading women to have sex with him and to get his name tattooed on their butts. Uh, lost your lost your sound.
Yeah, that's Nature Boy, Three God, Nature Boy out of Atlanta, from Atlanta.
It's there's a lot of, or there was another one out of another guy out of San Francisco from I think it was like SciCon. It was or even things like People's Temple in San Francisco too. When if you remember Jim Jones and the People's Temple, people who take on a religious authority, whether it's through psychology or whether it's through a Christian oriented type of manipulation or some other religious type manipulation, like some of the guys who are the successors of the Hare Krishna group, who who got manipulative, or you have people who sort of have um, ersatz Egyptian cults like the Nubian Society of Moors, the guy who did Yahweh Ben Yahweh in Miami, or you have the pure sex cult like the Children of God Family of Love and their flirty fishing, David Berg. I used to see people doing that stuff in at the World's Fair in Spokane. The Children of God came by and handed out their Mo letters at the entrance to the Spokane World's Fair. It was sort of like a combination of religion and what would you say? Religion and pornography. The guy, and the guy ended up marrying a bunch of young girls and taking pictures with them, and eventually had to leave the USA because he was trying to sleep with a lot of young girls. So there's a lot of these cults that try to manipulate for the benefit of the leader. And a couple of them have lasted long enough, like Islam, where people have forgotten the origins of the cult. They've forgotten that Muhammad got into his Islam game in order to get women and power and money. And it's clear when you read all the Islamic sources that was his game because he got 20% of the booty. So I mean the main job they had was going out and robbing people. I mean that makes for a pretty successful gang if you can manage to get people to go rob there in Houston. If you could get a group of people to go rob houses in Houston and promise them in the afterlife women with big boobs, if they would just rob for you and give you 20% of what they get, I mean that would be a decent scam in Houston today, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you ain't lying. It's crazy because brother Chip, whether you see it or not, the the when you mention the cult and following, um, I gotta put every religion inside of what you just named as far as a cult being. Like, let's say, okay, so look, outside looking in, taking our
Okay,
glasses off, we
outside
looking
looking in.
outside looking in, taking our glasses off, we looking at all of these religions. All of these religions are man-made. All of these religions have followings that usurp mankind. Or you not mankind, usurp millennials, generations, hundreds of years. So
Well, you don't. There is no such thing as a religion without human beings. I mean, the, we don't have any. We don't have any notion that chimpanzees or apes or any other groups are religious in any way. That seems to be something that is part of us.
right. So that's going back to the last conversation, Brother Chip, with the believing brain. You get what I'm saying? It's powerful.
Okay,
So when we look at every religion, we see that it's man-made. Um, every
there's humans
religion.
involved. There's humans involved in every religion. Yes.
No, this what I mean. This what I mean, brother Chip. When I say every religion is man-made, I mean God ain't God ain't tell nobody shit. Man said God
Well,
said.
that's what they. Well, that is an uh, that is an assumption that everyone who has ever talked about the name of God has been lying. That's an assumption that either they're lying or mistaken, and that's the
No, no,
assumption
no, brother.
that you're going with.
No, brother Chip. It goes back to the last conversation with the believing brain. So just because you believe in something, don't make it right. You feel me?
Right.
Okay, so just because you believe in something, don't make it right. Now, when I said every religion is man-made, we can't say God said nothing. We can say that man said God said. So when you say that would have to mean that which you just said nobody talked to God.
Well, you would have to say that, in the case of like the founding of whatever religion it is, you could only get you could only get to a certain point. You do have, for example, people who have a few people who have similar experiences who could talk to each other and compare their experiences. You don't find that in single leader groups like Islam. In Islam, Muhammad is the only one who knows whether or not he ever had a visit from the angel Jibril, whether he was, anything that he said, the only person who knows about it is him. That's the same thing is true for the Mormons. Nobody knows anything about the revelations of that are behind the Latter Day Saint religion except Joseph Smith. Yeah, I've read all the stuff, the people who witnessed to things but when you look at all their testimonies, it all comes down to he told them something, that they saw something that looked like, well, for example, they saw one of the people who was one of the three witnesses to the Book of Mormon saw him carrying around something in a bag, and he said that these were golden plates, but he didn't show him the bag. He showed him he didn't show him what was in the bag. He showed him a sack with metal that went clink clink clink, but he didn't show his witness that there were actually golden plates. So in a lot of these groups, you have one person who says, "This is what I saw," and you either have to accept him or reject him. Either he alone heard from God, and you have to believe it, or not. Uh,
Yeah.
but you're
See,
talking about the Hebrew prophets, or you're talking about the early church. There are more than one or two people who have had experiences, and they combine their experiences. So it's not just one person having an
got
experience,
you.
it's a number of people sharing an experience, but
I
not
got you, brother.
everyone.
I got you, brother Chip. So check me out. This where this where we this where I put my this where I put my queen all the way to right next to your king, and it's like touching. My queen is touching your king. Okay, so when we say when we say let me just tell you this. With science, we don't care about a first-hand account. We don't care about a second-hand account. We don't care about an eyewitness testimony. We don't care about a sob story or history. Science don't care about history. Science don't care about a sob story. Science don't care about a first-hand account or a testimony because it all can be biased. So what science do, like you said earlier, science work off results. So if I got if I got two people saying that God talked to them, if I got five people saying that God talked to them, if I got 100 people saying that God talked to them, brother Chip, that is a first-hand source. We are taught when you learning, getting into the science field, becoming scientific literate. The first thing we are taught is we don't move by none of that testimony, none of that. We move by results. So if I go to work 5 days out the week, I'm gonna get a check at the end of the week. If I don't go to work that next week, I won't get no check. That's the result. You waking up, going, putting your clothes on, going to work, fulfilling your duties, punching the clock, coming home. Now, with this religion, this God said, none of this can be proven. There is no results based. In fact, it became confusion to where we got over 100 different religions right now. Would you agree?
Probably more than that, but that's understandable. But there's a difference between historical knowledge and scientific knowledge. So if you're talking about historical knowledge, all of that is somebody said that they saw that they saw or experienced something. And if you have enough people who say they saw an experience, you can get a composite picture of a number of observations to create an overall picture. So historical knowledge is necessarily different from scientific because it all involves the experiences of human beings. So you can't expect a historical knowledge to say, I went out and tested the Battle of Waterloo, and I went out and put the Battle of Waterloo into a test tube, and it comes out that Napoleon really did lose at Waterloo in 1815. You don't get a test tube for that. You get the soldiers who participated. You get the testimony of Napoleon. You get the testimony of the Duke of Wellington. You get the testimony of Marshal Blucher. You get the memoirs of Napoleon written after the war. You get the memoirs of all these other people, and you put all that together, and you come up with the Battle of you come up with the diaries of the people who were commenting on the battle in London. Then you get up and you come up with the Battle of Waterloo. But none of that is scientific. So you have some things that are closer to being closer to the facts, closer to the date, more sources of information, uh, things that are more contemporaneous. You can have a lot more faith, for example, that you have lived through the election of Joe Biden, that there really was an election which elected Joe Biden president of the United States. You were alive for that. You watched the TV, you saw it, you could talk to me, I saw it, we saw it together. So for us, at this time, that's a common shared experience. But if we go 2,000 years from now, maybe there would be something. Well, I heard of somebody called a super wavy. And they say, "What? I don't believe in a super wavy. What evidence do you have that there was ever such a person?" Well, I mean, there was somebody said that he had a clothing company. Somebody said there was something called the Facebook, and that he had posts on Facebook. And my great 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 whatever saw a post of super wavy, and based on that he saw this, I conclude that there was such a person as a super wavy. But but in the future we could be in that position that nobody will believe in us. They say, why should I believe in a super wavy? I didn't see him. I didn't see
Okay,
a chip.
so
I didn't see a super wavy. How am I going to
okay,
believe in that?
I got you, brother Chip. Let's break this down. Let's break this down realistically. When is it said that Christ was existed? It said that Christ existed. Um, would it be in the what would it be? 20 AD? I mean, not 20 AD. I'm sorry. The would it be 20s? What is the time frame of Christ's existence? It would be a
Somewhere
single
between
people.
4 and 8 BC and somewhere around 26 or 7 AD.
Okay, so
So we're talking, so somewhere between 31 and 33 years, just around what would be, because of the vagaries of calculating time, we don't have a 0 AD.
okay,
The calendars are a little bit imprecise.
right. That's kind of why it came out crazy, but I knew it was a single digit. So when we talk about first hand account, there is no first hand account of Jesus Christ. So when you said that he got the when you said that Luke maybe possibly got the letters from Mary, um, I want you to see how I'm looking at this, brother Chip. I'm looking at this from a perspective that none of these people are real. Okay, so when you say that we got Luke learned from Mary, from Luke got possibly got a hold of Mary's writings, or Luke possibly knew the people that Mary knew. If I think that Mary was not a real person, but you could be like, you know what? That's not true, Super Wavy. We got Mary letters right here. What can I find Mary letters at?
Well, you're not going to. It's simply not in the nature of the time that you're going to find a woman writing. It's simply not there. You're not going to find a woman who said, "I, Mary, had a son, and he was born in thus and such a time." That doesn't exist in the first century, and it does. And biography, as such, doesn't exist in the first century. You don't have full. You just start to get some small amounts of biographical sketches, for example, Plutarch's writings in the late first century, who talk about the famous ancient Romans and Greeks, where Plutarch takes the life of a famous ancient Greek and lines him up with a famous ancient Roman. So that's one of the first biographical works. Another one is the lives of the 12 Caesars by a man named Suetonius. And there's clues to Jesus in the writings of Suetonius. There's also the annals of the Roman Empire by a man named Tacitus. And there's clues to the early church in the writings of Tacitus. There's references in Suetonius to Jesus, not Jesus himself, but the reaction of people to the ministry of the early church. So there's
So,
elements of that.
so you said Tacitus.
Right.
Do you subscribe to Josephus?
Yeah, Josephus is an early Jewish historian, and there's a reference to Jesus in a couple references to Jesus in Suetonius, and also a reference to James and his martyrdom in Jerusalem by the hands of a temporary Sanhedrin. So James, who was called the brother of Jesus, there's a reference to him, and it's very likely that Josephus knew James or knew people who knew him.
See, that's what I was gonna get to because Christian biblical scholars say that either Tacitus is lying or Josephus is lying. Now, Josephus, he come at the shit from a perspective like exactly what you just said, like kind of like what Luke, like Josephus come at it from a perspective of like he's a real person.
Right.
Now,
He's talking about people in Jerusalem. He wrote two books. One is his Antiquities, where he talks about the history of Israel from Genesis until just before the Jewish wars in AD 66. So obviously, for the first part of his Antiquities, he's retelling the Bible for his readers. So most of the early part of the Antiquities is a retelling of the Bible. But then later on, when he gets to closer to his own time, he's talking about the different personages in and around Jerusalem in the first century. So there's a reference, for example, to John the Baptist. There's a reference to Jesus. There's a reference to James. So those people are part of his story. Josephus was not a Christian. And the reference which is in Josephus has some signs of possibly having been touched by a Christian, but that's not necessarily so, because it sounds like it could have been a Christian reference, but it also could be that that he could have been somewhat influenced to a certain degree by Christians in the Roman capital when he was writing his Antiquities. We can't
I got
exclude that possibility.
I got you. So, to my knowledge, Tacitus and Josephus were not contemporary with Jesus, meaning they wasn't living when Jesus was leaving. When
No, they
Jesus
were
was
younger.
leaving?
They were younger.
What you say?
They were younger.
Right. So imagine, imagine. I don't want to throw out no crazy scenario, but if I got somebody trying to give me a story, and their story is, let's say, 70 years. Let's say their story is 70 years after this event happened. Let's say their story is 100 years after this event happened.
Well,
Or they
let's
trying to
go
tell
with the
me about
70. The 70 is reasonable. Let's
right,
go with 70.
right.
All right.
We can even say 50 or 60. We can even say 50 or 60.
We
But
have experience. We have experience, for example, of Civil War veterans who wrote about the battles of the Civil War 50 or 60 years after the war was over. And we
look,
use
Mr.
them.
Chip, look, Mr.
We
Chip,
use
they would
those
never,
accounts.
but look,
We
Mr.
use
Chip,
those accounts.
we use those accounts, but they are not primary resources. Meaning we're not
Yes.
dying, we're not taking the
Yes.
field there. What you
Yes,
say?
we use them as primary resources. A person who, as a young man, participated in the Civil War, who is 80, 85 years old, and finally writing about his experiences at the Civil War and writes his annals, those materials, yes, they are used as part of the history of the Civil War. The historians will take those 60-year-old memoirs and use them as primary source material for a history on the Civil War.
Brother Chip, what you just said, I agree with 100%. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Tacitus and Josephus did not know Jesus personally. So
No,
this is not a first-hand account.
no, they didn't. They are talking to somebody else. We don't know who they're talking to, but they're talking to somebody else.
And we supposed to take that as face value.
Well, I mean, it's not like there's a huge amount of dispute over it. I mean, the idea in the Gospels is that this man Jesus fell afoul of the Jewish authorities and the Roman authorities and was crucified under Pontius Pilate. That was There's a variety of sources that in the both Jewish, Roman, Jewish, and Christian that talk about the life of a person. The Talmud also, many hundreds of years later, talks about this. There was this man who reputedly had miracles or did miracles, who was an unusual person in the first century, who attracted attention from a variety of people, both positive and negative, ran afoul of both the Jewish and the Roman authorities, and was crucified. That's not a difficult story to swallow, and that's the story that Josephus essentially tells. So there's nothing there that would be different from what the Gospels say about Jesus, except that it's in a very telescoped form, and that it's an alternative transmission of that story. Josephus is not one of the Gospel writers. He is not a close follower of Jesus. He is a man who was a Jewish general for part of the Jewish wars, and became a turncoat, and became a partisan of the Flavian emperors, the emperors who destroyed his people. And then he wrote a story of his people as a turncoat, as a traitor to the Jews. He wrote the story of his people and the story of the war and the story of the first century Jewish community, which was lost in the Jewish wars and the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. So
Okay,
it's a
so
primary source. It's a very valuable source, and he took full advantage of his position as being close to the court of the Emperor Vespasian and Titus to write his story. And he lived through part of it. He knew some of the people as a young man. He knew some of the people who were involved in the life of Jerusalem, and he was able to talk to the people that he knew, possibly remembering stories that people had told him from his youth there in Jerusalem. It's not that big a place. It's like if you go to a small town and you're trying to remember, what about this guy? What about that guy? What do you remember about this? What do you
I
remember
take
about Pilate?
let me see if you understand this perspective. Okay, so yo, not just you, our whole one of our gripes with Muhammad from the Quran is that he got all his goddamn information from dreams. Um, at least that's one of my contentions. He got a lot of his all his information from dreams. That's one of my contentions.
Not really. He didn't really dream. He sort of he's what from what it looks like. He seemed to react to circumstances and got it seems like he got verses as he was going along.
So
Some
my bad, brother Chip. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, don't worry.
You can finish.
No, he seemed to get verses as he went along. He
Okay,
appears
so
to have made it up as he was going along,
okay, so when we look
as
at
I
the
see.
story, when we look at the story of the mirrors, when we look at the story of the dogs, him killing all the dogs in his village. When we look at the story of him getting all the mirrors out of his house, brother Chip, he was doing extreme stuff because he wasn't getting those dreams, those those goddamn teaching moments, and what was he calling them? The laws. What was he calling them? He
Oh, I
wasn't
think
getting
I know
those.
what you're talking about. You're saying that not the mirrors. They didn't have mirrors. You're thinking about images.
Right,
That
right, right. Images.
images are dogs, and that he was having trouble getting a revelation.
When I say
And
revelation, I mean dream. When I say dream, I mean revelation. I'm sorry.
okay, well, but I mean, it wasn't necessarily. He didn't really go with dreams. I mean, there's no really evidence from the descriptions in the Hadith about how he got his how he got his revelations. Didn't seem to have any dream aspect to it. It seemed
Okay,
to come as
so
he went along.
so if I'm brother Chip, I'm maybe you can't find no aspirations of him having dreams, but I'm gonna say 100%, 100%. This nigga Muhammad was going
Who was
crazy.
white, by the way. He was white.
Yeah, yeah. Arab. This nigga Muhammad was going crazy because the damn angel wasn't coming into his dreams. Now you could say, well, Super Wavy, we don't have no evidence of those angels coming to him in his dreams. The angels could have been coming, the angel Gabriel could have been coming to him. The angel could have been coming to him while he was at work or while he was in the cave. Nah, I don't look at it like that. I look at it like he was dreaming and getting information. I can't look at it like he was watching TV and then the angel came, like during the
Well, he
day. I
wasn't
can't.
watching. They didn't have TV, of course,
Right,
but
right, 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 right.
the cave thing seems to have been an experience in an actual cave, and that he was awake for, whatever it was, and that his experience was of something that squeezed him and told him to read, and he said, "I can't read." And then it squeezed him again and told him to read, and he said, "I can't read."
So you hold up. So you saying he wasn't asleep at the beginning of that?
No, he wasn't asleep at all.
Okay, okay. Maybe I read the wrong. Maybe I read the wrong information. You can continue, brother Chip.
It's from what I can see, it looks like he was awake for all of it. That he would get some, like they talk about him. Some of the hadith talk about him sweating when he was about to get a revelation, that he would sweat a lot and that he would shake a little bit, and then he would give his verses. But sometimes it simply was very matter of fact that he was that his wives would go to him. For example, the whole thing about hijab. They were telling him that Umar was coming around and harassing me and saying, I see you taking a shit. And then when he heard that Omar was going around to his wives and washing them shit, he the verses came that the women should cover themselves. So I mean, it was that sort of came like automatically. That not automatically. I mean, he just sort of he solved a problem as it came up.
Okay, so if I pull up a verse, if I pull up a verse about if I pull up a verse about um Muhammad um getting some knowledge from God in a dream. I want to be clear. Are you gonna say that is like a one hand thing? Or are you gonna say that
Well, I don't know what you're going to pull up, so go ahead and pull.
okay. My the biggest to me the biggest I'm looking for right now. To me the biggest um problem that I have with the belief systems is Muhammad dream from the biggest problem I have with the belief systems is the way that these people receive their revelation. All right, so the first it say let me see. All right, so it say Prophet Muhammad had several dreams and encounters with Gabriel. Several dreams and encounters with Gabriel, Jabril throughout his life. Let me get a scripture. Dreams and visions were one of the ways to which Allah communicated with the Prophet Muhammad. So I don't want to real quick, brother Chip. I don't want to make this a big point, but are you saying that Prophet Muhammad never had dreams that came from Allah? Is that what you're saying? Or are you just saying
Well, I
that?
mean, there's no. I mean, you can't say 100% what another person has experienced. The only thing that you can say about the Prophet of Islam is that nobody else besides him ever saw anything except what he said they saw. Even when they said that, well, there were a couple funny things. That somebody there was one of
I
his
got
early
you. Hold up, brother Chip. Stop, cause now I gotta cut you. This nigga Prophet Muhammad was out of control, and you know he was out of control. Look, it say the prophet then said, I saw a dream last night that two people came to me, took hold of my hand, and led me towards a sacred place. This is let me see, hold up. What verse is this?
This sounds like hadith.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. Hold up. Because this damn, what verse did I just click on? Okay, so it says, how would oh hold up. What is the verse? Hmm, See, it's giving me a lot of
It takes a lot of research to look at when you're trying to find things that you read and you try to remember. One thing that's really helped me a lot to find this stuff is if you remember a piece of what you have read, you can put into the search bar the words you remember and then type in sunnah.com because that's where, at least for like the hadith. So if I remember a piece of Quranic verse, I'll write in what I remember and then I'll write Quran. And then if I remember it properly, the verse will come up. One of several verses will come up, and then I'll find it that way. Or another way for the hadith is if I remember a phrase from the hadith that I read, and then I put in the search bar the phrase that I remember, and then sunnah.com, or then the some of the different surahs, not the surahs, the different hadith will come up from the different collections. If you have one that's similar in one collection or in another collection, even in English, it will help you. I mean, if I was an Arabic speaker, it would be even better because that's the original language of this stuff. But I don't have that.
real quick, brother Chip. Is a vision a dream?
No, a vision is awake.
A vision is a what?
A vision is a waking experience.
So when it said that, I wanna materialize this conversation. When it said that the angel Gabriel came to him, how do you how did came to him in a vision? How do you perceive that?
Well, that he saw something. That he saw something that but other people didn't see it. For
Okay, so
example,
you
there's
take
one there's
that
one
as
hadith where he says that I found an afrit, which is like an evil jinn, and he said that nothing was going to stop me except to nail him to the wall of the mosque so that you could come down and see him in the morning. But then I remembered that my brother Abraham said something or other, and so I didn't do that. So the idea was that he got a hold of a jinn, conquered him, and was going to nail him to the wall of the mosque, but for some reason decided not to do that. There's another one that's kind of interesting. Is there's people would see Dihya, would see somebody going to his house who is one of the most handsome Muslim men named Dihya, who might have been Muhammad's homosexual lover. Might have been. Doesn't say, but they would see him coming to his house at night, and so then and they would say, well, it looks like nobody else except Dihya. But then the prophet said, no, that was Jibril visiting me. So that's a case of he might have been scamming by having his homosexual lover show up, spend the night, and then tell the people that it was Dihya. Dihya was Jibril coming to give him revelation, and then he would tell people whatever the verses were the next morning. So that's a possibility for some of it. There's
all
uh,
right.
there's
So my bad, brother Chip. You got it.
No, I mean, I'll try to dig that up. I have a lot of this stuff uh, saved in my saved in cyberspace. I have a lot of these hadiths saved, and I can come up with the Dihya stuff. There was another one where he sweats, and he gets it. Another one where sometimes the surahs come like the ringing of a bell. So there's
Is
the,
real quick, is Bukhari a hadith? Brother Chip is Bukhari a hadith?
Say again?
I said, is the book of Bukhari a hadith?
Bukhari is one of the six Sunni hadith collections. Yes.
Okay, because it says in the Bukhari, that's where he had the dream. Um, say he had a dream of two people grabbing him, but I think I think I misused my words. I think I misused my words when I said dream instead of vision. So when we, I'm gonna just say this: do you think it's possible for people to have visions in 2023, brother Chip?
Sure. Why not? I know people who've
Okay,
had
so
visions. I
can you
know
give me
people who've
an
had them.
can you give me an example of a vision?
Well, for example, a friend of mine who saw an angel at the foot of her bed and watched him walk around the room, didn't try to talk to him.
Say it again, brother Chip. What you had said, brother Chip? Rumbo Yappa Chopper, man. I know my boy like, man, y'all boys going on the deep end. Rumbo Yappa Chop, what's up? My bad, brother Chip. I ain't hear that last part you said. Is that me? That's my audio. Rambo. I know that ain't my audio. Let me see. Rambo Yappa Chop. Rambo Yappa Chop. Oh yeah, that ain't my audio. We good.
Sorry about that. I got a call and got bounced.
You good, brother Chip. Um, so the Bakari is one of the hadiths. That's where it say that he had a dream. But I think I got my words mixed up with dreams and visions. So my question was, I asked you, you think it's possible for people to have visions today? You say yes.
Yes.
And my next question was, can you give me an example?
And the example I gave was my friend who saw an angel walking around at the foot of her bed and didn't thought it was an angel. Didn't want to talk to him or communicate. Was terrified. The angel or the being or whatever it was wandered around and left her after about 10-15 minutes, but she got a big impression out of seeing it. That's one I know of. There's other I've read of other people, writing different things about having a vision of one sort or another, and some of them, they appear to be sincere people, decent education. They have an experience, they remember it. So I don't see any reason why not. Now, what it all means, is it is it impression in their mind that they see something? Um, that people have visions, sure, why not?
Right. Okay. So
It might be true. The question would be, there again, if you're going to believe in something, the question I would always ask about a vision is, are you, and you tell me about a vision, is this to get money from me? Is this to get money from somebody else? Is this to get a girl or a number of girls? Is this to get power? Are you trying to run for president? And let's say Donald Trump said, I had a vision that you should all vote Trump 2024. So if he had a vision and told us that, does he have something to gain from it? Yeah, I mean, he could go back to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So if he told us that he had a vision from God, like the Blues Brothers, to get the band back together again? Well, what's in it for him? That would be the question. What's in it? What's in it for the person? Is this a self-serving thing? Is this other-centered? Is there a benefit for? Is it for a benefit for the people who hear it, or is it private just for you? Which it could be. I mean, for example, I'm not affected either way by the "Angel, My Friend" song. She saw it, I didn't. But if she saw it, I don't have any reason to give her a hard time over it, because she's not trying to take anything from me. She's not trying to tell me, you've got to do something for me. It's okay. No, I
Okay,
don't.
so my bad, brother Chip.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have no problem. I mean, that first example you gave was kind of spooky, but I have no problem with people. Um, it depends how far we take it. Like you said, if the end of this vision requires me giving up my money, then yeah, your vision is bullshit. But if person right. So if somebody come, you know what, man? Damn, man, I had a vision. I had a vision about this that's going on right now. Last week, that's deja vu. We can agree that deja vu is real. So my problem is when you have these goddamn visions that create, when you have these visions that attest to a cult, when you have these visions that attest to your religious belief, because in reality, you're not asking me for money at the end of your vision. You're trying to take my soul. That's worse. I can go to work and get another paycheck next week. I can't. How long is it gonna take me to get out of the Bible? How long is it gonna take me to get out of the Quran? If you get what I'm saying. So this kind of worse.
Well, the question is the question is this: is somebody trying to is somebody saying, have this vision? I had this vision, so pay me. I had this vision, so give me a wife. I had this vision, so vote for me, make me powerful. If none of those things are going, and they say, I had this vision, so live a better life, be a better person, work, have a, don't rob, don't steal, don't cheat, don't commit adultery. I had a vision which will show you how to have a better life, how to be a happier person. And they want something good for me. They don't want anything for themselves. They don't want any money from me. They don't want any. They don't want me to give them
Who is
any
who is
girls.
this? Who is this, by the way, brother Chip? Who is this that you giving these characteristics to?
Well, I mean, we could take Jesus as an example. Did
Brother
he ask?
Chip.
He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for women. He didn't ask for. He didn't ask to be the emperor of Rome. He didn't ask.
brother,
He didn't ask to be a judge. He didn't ask for any of that stuff.
brother Chip. Why did look, brother Chip? This the funny part. This the funny part. Jesus didn't ask for money, right? But if you go to his church today, your ass got to give up some money. Ain't that crazy?
Well, I mean, the church does different things. If you go to church and you want to listen and you want to have your children learn about Jesus, if you want to contribute to say hospitals, or you want to contribute to orphanages, or if you want to contribute to um feeding a mission to feed to give meals and beds to homeless people, and you want to contribute to that, well, I mean, all that stuff costs money. But it's not going. But it's not one of those things going to. Well, how do I say this? It's not going to. It's not going to Jesus. It's not. I mean, it's not a sex cult. Jesus didn't have a sex cult, as far as we know. No, there was not a whisper of that. There was not a whisper of any of that. There was no. there was no evidence that the early followers of Jesus were in it for the money. They were, they were not rich. Most of them worked for their own money. They financed their ministries out of their own work. So they weren't trying to take. The only thing that Paul collected money for was that he took up a collection for the famine in Jerusalem. So he took money in order he took money from the churches in order to send money to other Christians who were. It was well known. I mean, you can find this in the history of Tacitus, talking about the Jerusalem famine. This was a real thing. That there was a real famine in Jerusalem, and the Bible talks about the collection for it. And the Bible is a source for an additional source to the Roman histories that talk about the bad harvests, several bad harvests in the Roman Empire, and the poverty of Jerusalem during the reign of Claudius, when Paul was active. So we know that the famine was real. We know that Paul was collecting money from Acts, from Acts and the epistles for the Jerusalem church. And we also know that his tradition was tent making, that he made luxury housing for merchants who were traveling around the Roman Empire. He was a skilled craftsman. He made a good living at it.
All right,
So
brother. Oh, my bad, brother Chip.
so it's not so you say we have to look at. It's not to say that Paul is right. You can't say that Paul is right because he didn't make money on it, because he didn't go after women, because he didn't go after power. You can't say that he's right because he didn't do those things. But at least it doesn't knock him out right off the bat. It doesn't eliminate him just because if he had gone after women, if he'd gone after political power, if he'd gone after money, and trying to make himself rich on religion, that would knock him. For me, that would knock him out immediately. And the same
Okay,
is true for Jesus or any of the early apostles.
okay, so um, I can't remember the last part that I was asking, but basically with the whole I was saying that Jesus asked, if you go to a Jesus church, you ask for money. Your point before that, my whole reason for bringing that up was you said Jesus don't ask for money. Jesus don't ask you to do this. Jesus don't ask for you to do this. Okay, so Jesus don't ask for you to do none of that stuff. And like how you said, he just coming in, telling you to be a good person, telling you to do this, telling you to do that, telling you to do that. Okay, now if we looking at this from the outside looking in, or if we looking at this from the other perspective, Jesus was a goddamn scammer. Jesus was a damn con man. He out here. You know why Jesus got hung, brother Chip?
Well, for two reasons. Among the Jewish community, they accused him of blasphemy by claiming to be the Son of God. They accused him of blasphemy. And in the Roman circumstances, by claiming to be the king of Israel, that he was setting himself up against Caesar to be a king, as opposed to the Tiberius, the Roman emperor. So the idea that he was crucified by claiming to be the king of Israel, and the Jewish leadership didn't want him to be making those claims. They believed that he was a dangerous menace to the Jewish community. And there's a suggestion that Caiaphas, the high priest at the time, said that it would be expedient for one man, that is to say Jesus, to die for the people, so that if Jesus died, then the people would live. So they believed that he was dangerous. They believed that he could incite sedition, and so they first of all accused him of blasphemy, but they couldn't execute him for blasphemy. In order to do that, they needed to hand him over, in order to avoid problems with the people, they wanted him to be executed by the Romans. So they handed him over to the procurator, Pontius Pilate, in order for him to be executed for sedition.
Brother Chip, did you just say did you just say Jesus went around protesting that he was the king of Israel?
That was what, yeah, that was what the idea was, is that he was a king. That was the accusation that they made of him, because they said in Mark chapter 14, the high priest said, "I adjure you to tell me, are you the king of are you the king of the Jews?" And the answer was, and the answer he gave was, "You say that I am, or I am, and you shall see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with the Ancient of Days." So, so they were saying, uh, Mark is claiming that Jesus claimed that he was going to be the figure in Daniel chapter 7, the Son of Man, the divine Son of Man, coming on the clouds of heaven with the Ancient of Days to establish his eternal kingdom. So it ties it all together, and then in the Gospels, the high priest says, "We have heard his blasphemy. What more do we need to hear?" So they knew that he was making a very big claim about himself. So as a result of that, they had enough in their own minds to try to get him tried for sedition. So to they brought him to Pilate in order to be judged for sedition. And Jesus more or less let it happen. He gave a defense, but not one that was going to save him. And the people of Jerusalem gathered a crowd and petitioned for his death.
I got you. So basically, from the outside looking in, Jesus came around this goddamn, he came around the city causing ruckus. He came
Right.
around the city um having, what is that called when you have too many people in a building? Mass occupancy.
Well, I mean, he went to Jerusalem. He created a scene in the temple. He drove out the money changers at the entrance to the temple. And so they were worried about their revenue. They were worried about their money stream, because they were making a lot of money changing Roman sesterces for temple shekels in order for the people to buy the sacrificial animals at the temple. And Jesus was opposed to that, and he said, "You have made my house into a den of thieves." He drove them out. He wouldn't let them do their job, and he was opposed to the sale of the animals at the temple, the changing of money at the entrance to the temple, which was the major source of revenue for the Jewish leadership. So he went after their money, and so in response, they went after him.
I
And
like that. I like that. I like that. I like how you did that. Okay, so with the with the what would you say, let me ask you this. What would be the similarities to you between a vision and a dream? What would be the similarities to you?
well, a dream is something that comes to you in sleep, an impression that you get in your mind from something that you see or believe you see or communicate in your mind to something in your mind. And depending on if it's something that's extremely vivid, that seems to have relevance in the waking world, you could say that it would be some sort of like a revelatory dream. If it had enough details to mean something in the waking world, a person would reasonably think that they had been visited in some way by God. If the dream they had was vivid enough and clear enough and communicative enough that it provided real information, there could be um, evidence that would come from dreams, either for yourself or maybe for someone else. A vision is something that comes when you're awake, that you see something or hear something while your eyes are open and you're conscious. So maybe you see something and other people see something, or that you see something and somebody else doesn't see it. So yeah, I mean, my friend, when she was alone in her house, saw a vision of an angel, what she thought was an angel. She was awake for it. So she saw something while she was awake.
Okay, so
And maybe that she could see and hear something, or somebody could see and hear something while they're awake, and that would be a vision.
I got you. I got one last question before we get up out of here. This is my last question for you, brother Chip, and I appreciate
Okay.
you for your time. My last question: could money be an alternative to God?
Sure, in a sense. People want money. They want to have things with money. They like want to do things with money. They get power from money. Money has a lot of benefits, and people do a lot of things for money. They'll kill for money. They'll marry and divorce for money. They'll kill for money. Sure. Well, wouldn't you say that money has a very powerful force? The love of it, the desire for it.
Most definitely. I think money is the root to all happiness.
You think it's the root? Well, how much money do you think is the root to all happiness? How much?
Um, to be honest with you, brother Chip, I think that's subjective. But since you asked me, I'm gonna say it. Um, I want to say roughly $1 million.
Okay, so what would $1 million get you that would make you happy?
Well, I believe the first thing that we need as Homo sapiens sapiens, food, clothing, and shelter. So, food,
Well,
clothing, and
a
shelter.
lot of people who make a lot less than that, or who have a lot less than that, have food, clothing, and shelter.
Most definitely, Mr. Chip. So where I was going was, as first things we need as Homo sapiens sapiens, food, clothing, and shelter. We know we need water. We know we need sunlight. We know we need air. With this $1 million, brother Chip, we should be able to buy us a modest home, not a mansion, a modest home, modest 2, 3 cars, um, take trips every year. Um,
You might manage that, but I think you could get. I think you could. Well, I don't know about the 2, 3 cars. Maybe two or three junkers if you're good at counting.
you know, brother Chip, down here in Texas, you can get a nice car for like $4,000
Well, that's good. I mean, that would be okay.
cash car.
I think that's within your. I think that's within your reach. Sell a few clothes. You can buy a car. I'm sure you can. You have a car, I bet.
Yes, sir.
You have a car. You have an apartment, I think.
Yes, sir.
Do you own it, or are you renting it?
Own, do I own? I'm renting my apartment.
You're renting your apartment.
Yes, sir.
So at some point, you might, depending on the area you go to, you could aspire to an apartment someplace in Texas that would be, that you could probably afford to buy with a little bit of work. So I think you could probably get most of what you're mentioning there for less than $1 million.
Most definitely. Now let me ask you this though. Um, that was my last question. So let me expound
Uh-huh.
on your answer. Okay, so with with everything that I just said about money being an alternative to God and food, clothing, and shelter, and taking trips every year. It was some stuff I left. It was some stuff I left off because I got cut off. Some of the stuff I um wanted to incorporate was this had nothing to do with money, but food, clothing, and shelter, cherishing your family, um, treating others how you want to be treated. Now, with that $1 million on top of that, that's when the cars, the house, stability part of this conversation, and luxurious with the vacations. That's where that come in at. So, by no way was I saying that. Um, by no way was I starting to was I trying to start the thinking process of the conversation off with money. Like I feel like we have to have food, clothing, and shelter, and we have to have family respect and family cherishness. They got to be under wraps. Now, with me taking this $1 million over God, or with me saying alternatives to God is $1 million, how would you? I know you said is possible, but can you give me a honest assessment on what I just said?
Psychologists have talked about happiness and money. And there's some evidence to suggest that up to a certain point, a certain amount of income or financial capacity, that you do get increased satisfaction, which maybe to some extent translates to happiness. But that there is a point of diminishing returns. That the psychologist suggests that, say, up to around $75,000 a year, a person can, I mean, of course, that number would be adjusted up over time as inflation kicks in, but up to around something like that, you can you can get more satisfaction from life with money. But that at a certain point, more money does not equal more happiness. And actually, the Bible suggests that this is also true, that where it says a little with peace and quiet is better than great riches with great troubles. So, I mean, you would say, take, for example, somebody like Donald Trump. He has great possessions, he has a tremendous amount of money, but he also has people trying to get it from him all the time. And he has federal courts trying to put him in prison for 100 years on this thing and that thing and the next thing. So, is he, with his power and his trophy wife and all and his political office, is he really any happier than he would be if he made a lot less money and had a lot less hassle? That would be, I mean, he would have to answer that question for himself. But a lot of people would say, I don't know if being in Donald Trump's position is going to make me any happier than I am if I make 75 or $80,000 a year and nobody's after me, nobody wants to sue me, nobody's trying to get anything from me.
Man, I ain't never felt like I disagree with you on a point more than what you just said right there, brother.
You disagree?
Yeah, I feel like anybody over 90% of the world population would rather be in Donald Trump's shoes with the pending charges, with the pending jail time. I bet over 90% of the world would rather be in Donald Trump's shoes right now than in their own shoes.
So I mean, honestly, straight up, would you like to go and sit in court for the next 2 years and potentially do 100 years of Donald Trump's time in exchange for having his bank account sitting in at your local bank? Would you really take that?
real quick, just to clear something up. Did you just say that Donald Trump might do 100 years?
He has got enough charges placed against him right now in federal and state courts that if he was convicted on everything, he could serve up to 100 years in prison.
Brother Chip. Now let's be real here. And maybe we just on two different sides of the coin. Do you actually think Donald Trump is going to prison or going to jail?
It's possible. It's possible that he could go to prison. I think that there would be a tremendous pushback if they tried to put him in prison. But there are at least three federal courts and a state court and a RICO case against Donald Trump. There's a RICO case, and the RICO case is like everything that everybody's charged with, they put on the top guy. So everything that everybody under him ever thought of doing, if they stick if they stick the underlings, whatever they did to him, it's like you add 5 years, 5 years, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, and then you stick it to the big guy at the end, 60, 70 years. That's a state court RICO case, which is going against Trump and against Rudy Giuliani, which is kind of ironic because Rudy Giuliani destroyed the mafia with RICO cases. And now he's facing one himself. But yeah, I mean, he could potentially, if everything fell right and the courts don't defend him, and no, and he can't get out of it, he could actually spend election night in prison waiting for the results of the presidential election. That's a possibility. This is going
All
to
right.
be one crazy year.
And just to answer your question, yes, I would take Donald Trump current situation over over any other. I ain't gonna say over any other, but over my situation. Over my situation.
Well,
I can't even.
I don't know how much money you make, and I'm not asking you how much it is. But let's say you can make 100 grand a year on your records and your clothing. Let's just say you can. You sell 100 grand a year profit on your clothing and on your records and your concert sales. You're making $100,000 a year. You have a little condo someplace. You have a nice bed to sleep in. You make 100 grand a year. You've got your money. You have a nice girlfriend who wants to be a Ms. Super wavy sidekick. You have all those things. Would you really want $1 billion in a 100-year RICO case, and 100-year three courts, and sit in court for the next year and a half, just to on the chance that you might be president and have $5 billion in your bank?
Yeah.
Would you really want that?
Brother Chip. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I'm gonna take Donald Trump position 100 times out of 100. Man, he got a private jet. He got the Trump Tower. I need all that, brother Chip. I need all that.
I have to tell you, I would not. I would not want to be in Donald Trump's shoes for anything. He's, I mean, it could be interesting to be president, but to be facing a 100-year case to try to get to the White House. I mean, it could
See,
be interesting. It could be
see when you
interesting to
say
be involved in that life a little bit.
See, when you mentioned the 100 years, I never. When you mention 100 years, let me just say this. I think we have two different. I think we have two different. I think we honestly have two different thought processes. My thought process is Donald Trump got too much money to go to jail, and he's not going to jail. That's my thought process is, brother Chip. I'm 100% sure Donald Trump will do no jail time. Now, your thought process is different, so that's why I think we the you bringing up the 100 years, like brother Chip. I'm not lying to you. If I had the normal panel on here, Jalen, Bo, Goo, Jesse, all of them would say that Donald Trump is not going to jail. So I think maybe you looking at it from a unbiased perspective, but I think I'm looking at it from a he can pay his way to not go to jail. Like that's how I'm looking at it.
I don't think there's money enough. I don't think there's money enough for his enemies. If they have the power to do it, he has tremendous enemies, and there are so many people who would just give anything to put him in prison. I mean, part of the reason that he's as strong a candidate as he is that every time they throw more crap at him, at least half the population is saying this is bullshit. This is political, complete, absolute, total bullshit. There's nothing in it. There's no way that they're gonna try so hard to get him on this penny ante bullshit that doesn't seem where nobody's been robbed, nobody's been beaten, nobody's been raped, nobody's had any real harm done to them, and then they're going to put all this stuff in front of him. So he's very strong politically because people are saying the more they try to get him, the more we want him. And the more undemocratic the Democratic Party has become, by not even presenting Joe Biden to the New Hampshire primary. He's not even running in New Hampshire. He's not on the ballot. They don't care about the voters in New Hampshire. They don't care about the caucuses in Iowa. They're not even going to run him in Florida. They're going to have an election in South Carolina, which he'll win. He's not even going to be on the ballot in Florida. The Democratic Party is going to choose all the delegates from Florida. They're not even going to have an election because the other three, the ex-Democratic candidate Robert Kennedy, who left the Democratic Party because even with 20% of the vote, they weren't going to let him be part of anything. And then Marianne Williamson with 5% and Dean something or other with 4%. The other two Democrats with 9%. They're not even going to let them be on the ballot.
Right.
They're not organizing any debates for them. Joe Biden isn't going to debate. The Democrats aren't going to organize any debates for those candidates. They're not even going to let them on the ballot. So the Democratic Party, they've made King Joe. They have essentially anointed him to be the king for the next 4 years without any vote whatsoever, if they can get it through. So if
Right.
they can put Trump in prison or make him look or make him or dirty him up to the point, there is no election. There will be no real election until November. And if they have their way, the only candidate that will be free and able to be voted on will be Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. He gonna be 90 years old.
He'll be 82 years old when he starts his term, and he's only working 2 afternoons a week. He goes to work at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, and he's done by 4:30 p.m. on Thursday. He takes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday off, and they
What the
pay him
hell is he
400.
doing? The hell is he doing those days?
Probably taking naps and eating Geritol. I mean, have you seen Trump? Have you seen Trump making fun of him?
Say it
Trump was
again, bro.
talking.
Have I?
This is funny. This is funny. There's. You remember the last election, Joe Biden said, "Oh, I'd like to take Donald Trump behind the bar, and I'd beat the hell out of him."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, Joe Biden said he'd like to take me behind the bar and beat the hell out of me." He said, "Well, if Joe got me behind the barn, all I'd have to do is."
When did Trump say this?
Oh, at one of his rallies. He's a really good comedian. Tremendous comedian. I mean, he's got a great sense of humor. You know, um, And so he's getting when people who go to his rallies, it's like going to the comedy club. He gives them a speech. He makes fun of Joe
Yeah,
Biden. He makes
yeah,
fun of the courts. He makes fun of all this, and they're just cheering him on.
yeah. I think Donald Trump is actually one of the funniest people to get that much attention.
Yeah.
But hey, brother Chip, it's been an amazing conversation. I'm gonna look into the damn. You said Joe Biden only worked 2 days a week.
About maybe three. I mean, if you look at the presidential calendar, usually on Mondays and Fridays, he has nothing going on. There's nothing scheduled for him on Mondays or Fridays. There's nothing scheduled for him in most mornings. It's usually, if you look at the presidential calendars, it starts at 1 a.m. on Tuesday. I mean, 1 p.m. on Tuesday.
That's
They
crazy,
have him
man.
on a very, very, very light schedule. He has no stamina whatsoever.
He's on a time restriction like Zion Williams, huh?
So what's the Zion Williams thing? Tell me about that.
You know Zion Williamson.
Yeah, I know about him.
When he first came into the league, they had him on a time restriction because he was so big, like chubby.
He was too fat.
Yeah, 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 yeah. He had his weight was too high, so they had him on a time restriction. So it's kind of like how you saying they got Joe Biden on the minutes restriction because it's because of the health,
Yeah,
the age.
right. And they're simply not paying any attention to it. I mean, it's very. This is the part really on both sides. It's very strange. I understand Trump. I understand where he's coming from. I understand that he wants redemption. He wants to get back what he thought was taken from him. I understand this. But on the other side, I don't understand why Biden is letting himself be trotted around the track at age 82 for another 4 years. Why would he do it when he could simply say, I've served the country, I kept the country safe from Donald Trump. It's time for a new generation to take the helm. I'll be here to advise them. I'll be here to give them all my advice and wisdom, but I'm too old for this job. He would get so much respect automatically if he did that. He'd get a huge amount of respect. He would do a tremendous amount of good for the Democratic Party by giving up and letting somebody else in, but it's too late.
Facts,
It's too late to bring somebody in now.
facts,
He should have
facts.
done it. He should have done it last August or last July, and say in a
I,
year we're going to have a new president, and it's not going to be Joe Biden. And I've enjoyed the hell out of being your president. I've done my best for you, but now it's time for somebody else to take the helm. And I suggest that you look for a new president. I'll be here to help you. I'll support whoever the Democratic Party chooses, and I want the best for the country. He would get a lot of respect. He'd get a ton of respect if he did that, but he won't do it.
I agree with you. I agree with you 1,000,000%. About to get up out of here, brother Chip. Like I said, man, I
Good night.
appreciate you for the conversation, brother Chip. Take care of
Have a
yourself.
good night. You too.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All
Bye
right, boss.
bye.
All right.